Hello, hi. Make sure I've got Kate. Actually, one sec. Hi, this is really exciting. This is the most people that we've had the pleasure of welcoming to something. And I was saying to Kate earlier that it is such a treat and a revelation to know that this book is out in the world and it's having the reception that it is having. For Kate Fox, host, who's also the editor of this extraordinary collection, NeurodiVERSE, for putting this together, and to Fergus for putting it on our radar. It's brilliant when small presses are the ones who are pushing the boundaries and seeking out amazing poets and putting them together in these extraordinary ways. So props to Flapjack for this brilliant collection and many others. Your host for tonight is going to be Kate, who's going to introduce this collection and some of the brilliant contributors to it. We're going to have readings, we're going to have a bit of a Q&A, and if you are watching from home, you can also ask questions, and you will have a chance to ask those then. And then at the end, Fergus is put together with the a little further reading at the end. So will you join me all in welcoming the brilliant Kate Fox, author of Oscillations, editor of Movement.
Hello, thank you, Mary. It's so amazing and lovely to be here. I think because of the subject matter of the brilliant anthology, I'm probably even less masked as an autistic person than I would be at any other normal performance. So part of me is just wanting to go, look at the dapple light of the trees and the thing, and the washing, and the people, and you're not on Zoom, it's real, and just give you my brain splurge. But I'm going to try and manage brain splurge with making the event run, because it's for me, as mainly a performance poet, books and poems don't really live until they are spoken aloud in front of people. Maybe, and I know Zoom counts, and we had a brilliant launch for NeurodiVERSE the other week, but there's something about this that means that what had been quite an abstract idea to me, where the brilliant activist and poet Janine Booth, who's based in London, basically went to Flapjack Press, who were based in Manchester, with the idea for this anthology, having long felt that as more and more neurodivergent voices begin to be heard, it would be good for them to be collected together and recognised as neurodivergent together. So that kind of happened. And then Janine and Paul from Flapjack asked me and Robert Steventon, a Manchester poet, to be on board. I'm based in the northeast of England. And we did everything by email, of course. It was the last couple of years. But what was amazing was when we put this call out for poems from the point of view, I think we were quite open, from neurodivergent people or about neurodiversity. It was then astonishing to get so many poems through from so many facets of neurodiversity. Autistic poems, ADHD poems, dyslexic poems, Tourette's poems, OCD poems. Neurodiversity is these things and more, because ultimately neurodiversity as a movement, which is what I prefer to think of it as after the activist Nick Walker, a movement calling for greater acceptance of the idea that different brains, different ways of processing and being in the world is a thing to be celebrated joyously. It's necessary for our being and our well-being. And that was so evident in the poems and the pieces and in the anthology. And I'm a bit surprised that this isn't like the 25th anthology of neurodivergent writing, but we're not quite there yet. Those of us who were in the book, those of you who are here this evening are in something of a vanguard. So it's brilliant that we've got 3 contributors with us, and we'll hear their work. And I'm going to do a couple of poems now to start us off. And the first one, just to be perverse, it's not in the anthology or in my book. It's called The Psychiatrist Confession. And I'm always fascinated with the idea of diagnosis and labelling people and how it is useful. For me, it was useful to be labelled autistic aged 42 5 years ago, because it meant I finally found my tribe. And I found out how to be autistic via the autistic community. I found out how to be unmasked and unfiltered, to be myself and not have to waste energy faffing about being somebody else. But at the same time, a label can be restricting and constraining, especially when it's imposed on us from outside and we don't get to inhabit it. But basically, this poem is just an excuse for a load of daft puns. So anyways, The Psychiatrist Confession. Need to go to Greg's more than once a week. You may be psychotic. Pushing your card with you all the joy you seek. Autoerotic. Someone who analyses fires, a pyrobraniac. A person who loves records more than cuddles, a Dex maniac. Like Hardy, not Laurel, stanorexic. Peach, flanorexic. Yes, I'm here to give you a label, give you a diagnosis, putting you in a psychological category. That's just my little neurosis. Someone who has difficulty deciding which side of the cheek to present during social greetings. Dyslexic. Have urges to tread in drying concrete, cement you. Get upset if you climb in, get worse, sorry, better, good. Get upset if you climbing vines aren't neat. Wisteria. Belgian accent and a curly black tash, you must be paranoid. Feel the need to run your hand down church pew rails and seek clerical vows, Asperger's syndrome. Get upset, get frightened if running through a field of cows, bulimia nervosa. Get a buzz from honey, you're a paedophile. Quantum physics and vegetarian cream cheese, more your style. Quarkolepsy. Frankly, couldn't give a damn. Rhett Butler syndrome. Yes, I'm here to give you a label, give you a diagnosis, putting you in a psychological category. That's just my little neurosis. Thank you. So we've got clapping. Yay, is a thing available to us. And Sunny was doing the raising hands clapping that was originally came from the deaf, small d and big D community, didn't it? Which was a kind of visual clapping, but actually for many of us autistic and other neurodivergent folk, it's a lovely relief from clapping. I mean, I like clapping, what's the word, auditory, having a sound, clapping that has a sound. I'm sure there's a better word than whatever I just said, anyway. But also, so if you've never done that, feel free to have your first go at it. It's very evening, never too late to start. As modelled by Sunny and Fergus, who you will hear from later. I'm going to do one more poem, the one that's actually in NeurodiVERSE, and then hand over to three of our fabulous contributors. So for me, something that basically, the story of how I got my diagnosis is, I'm not sure it's particularly typical, but there are lots of stories that are atypical. But to cut a long story short, I was doing a PhD about Northern English women and stand-up comedy. And in the last chapter, I had to talk about my own performance and performing. And I began to feel, when I was quoting all these writers on performance, that I was lying, because I recognised that the writers on performance were very much talking from a neurotypical point of view about body language and gesturing and eye contact. And I'm like, well, I'm not that. I know I'm not that really. I've known for a few years and I can't write from that perspective. So I went to my GP and he got me to fill out an AQ 10 questionnaire, 10 questions that are meant to prove you're autistic. Like, are you able to tell if what a character's intentions in a story are, for example? And I was like, I'm a writer. I've learned these things. And I answered the questions as honestly as I could. And even though I knew that I needed to get 6 out of 10 in order to be referred for a diagnosis, I could only answer 3 with a yes, honestly. And I wrote loads of notes all around the paper about why all the questions were wrong. I think I had references for some of the notes. And my GP rang me up. And I mean, obviously, my reaction to the questionnaire itself was very autistic. But the GP said, could I fill in the questionnaire again, basically with fewer notes and more lying? And I was like, okay. But actually, it still had taken me a year to get a diagnosis. And at that time, for once, I had enough money to go privately, and I'd met a group of women at an Autism in the Arts Festival who told me where to go, the Tizard Centre at the University of Kent. And I went along and I got the diagnosis, and it has been life-changing, but I think only life-changing because it enabled me to talk to other autistic people, knowing that I was one of them, and to find out how to be in autistic culture. At events like Autistic, which is a retreat for autistic people, at a series of group group meetings, really, that Sonny and Fergus ran in Edinburgh a few years ago, and it's all been very important. So even though it seems paradoxical, autism is thought to be about being isolated and alone. For me, it is very much about community and being together. And I was interested to learn that trees communicate underground. They pass signals to each other, and that made me think about how that's what autistic people do. I wish I had, I'm now just filling for time until I find the poem. Hang on. Right. I will find it. Can you find my poem? Thank you. And I'll do a short poem that's unrelated to autism called Etiquette. I always say thank you to the driver as I'm getting off the bus. Saying thank you very much would be making an unnecessary fuss, since he was probably going that way. Anyway. Thank you. Okay, this is called What Could Be Called Communication. And anyone who's been in a group of autistic people, knowing they're autistic, may recognise them. You might find them staying near the walls or clutching their earphones, rocking from foot to foot and looking just above their audience. They might be wincing at sirens. There is literally a siren in the background. I arranged that. Saying pardon a lot in crowds, clutching the rails on angled walkways, wondering at the calm voices, at the calm faces of everybody else. Sometimes they rest a foot on a crossed ankle in such a way that others will click love in recognition when one of them writes a Facebook post about it. They might have coloured lenses or squint perpetually into the sun. They think everyone can see the fluorescent lights humming. Their eyes dart or fix, so they might be called evasive or invasive. They're stroking a finger, twiddling with their hair, tearing up paper, something in a mesmerising rhythm. They do not always recognise each other. They were often to be found clustered around tea urns, outside where it's quiet, in rooms, so they can perpetuate their tangents and straight lines, build forests of themselves, where they communicate under the soil, sending micellar releases of carbon and water to those who need them, passing on survival tips, encouragement, warnings, impulses of sound and light. Thank you. Wow, that's the first time. Okay, so I'm really glad, as I say, to introduce three contributors who are from Scotland. Feels right, the Scottish Lord of the book. I heard Spencer Mason read their poem at the online launch of the book, and it's kind of hard to get a reaction in an online launch, but there was almost an audible ooh. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing that poem and another again. Please, can we welcome Spencer Mason?
Hiya, how are we doing? Yeah, Spencer. It's really, isn't it beautiful? The sun's out and it's been absolutely bonkers for the past week, and it's actually, like, I don't know, I was expecting that marquee to be in Glasgow by now. I'm NeurodiVERSE. It's really cool that this is such a, I don't know, just such an event, but I'm schizoaffective. If you don't know what that means, it's like this beautiful, tasty recipe where you combine a little bit of schizophrenia, a little bit of bipolar, you shake it up, and when your baby comes out, he's pretty fucked up for the rest of his life. It has all sorts of kind of weird tropes, like I found out when I was 16 because I found out that other people don't have voices in their heads, so I was pretty late to the party, and there's other things like synesthesia, like seeing colours or just knowing that the number 5 is an absolute dickhead, things like that, number 7 personalities. Anyway, it's got some genetic components, which is what my poem's about. So it's called My Unfortunate Daughter. I'm going to read it from the book, because I do a different version live. I hope that's okay. But yeah. Come, my dear sweet, come willing with smoke. Come and sit yourself by this fire here and help yourself to toast. Now, can you see these flames, my dear, as they dance in tribunal for you, or do you only perceive anger from when they took all you had left to lose? Yes, I mind as you got older, girl, learned all of your own accord, yet you always kept Dundee's rebel heart. You never did what you were told. You always slept so sound and sweet, it seemed forever dreaming through and bold, yet I know these nights have gotten darker as you have gotten old. They considered it genetics, dear. See, I gave thee all I had to give, so now all of these demons that have plagued me are now too in your soul to live. And I know you cry at night, my brave. I know these terrors and the fright. I know how these voices convene and connive, convince you falsities are right. But they've been around a while, my dear. I've seen this all before. Yes, I know these things that you fear and that you feel and that your heart has become torn. Sorry, but I was smooth as fuck. Between moral questions of deserving love. Your callousness doubting you'll ever be enough to find a humble suitor of honest heart to make you sing like the whitest of doves. I ken such things can always be, as you beg and barter with your fear to fade to gratify your plea. You must not be captive, my dear, lest you ever doubt yourself. Let your dreams be courage to reap, and I will stay by the fire, my love. I will stand guard as you sleep. Thanks. I'm going to do another one. This one's right on my phone. I just wrote it the other day. I got this thing next week, and you're kind of my guinea pig, so I hope that's all right. It doesn't have a name, so if anyone has a suggestion, then fucking fire away. Another victim of rhythm, taking centre stage of her vacant iris. Facade stolen from grandeur and herbs, dilapidated rhymes, gallous as love held up against the crimes of my nature. See, it's like looking at you is a reminder that I am me, and hearing your voice, that phantom dressed in satin, reminds me that I could be we could be you could be we, she and me could be me, it's me, but at the end of the day, nothing would change either of us from being I. We not reduced to an us, but emboldened as a they. Or are them already a they? Or are them processing an addiction to dereliction with a leaking fountain pen, replacing a needle with an ink cartridge, and a gender that evolves to sex? When I consider me or I in the context of our us, then it's me with the shaved legs hanging from a floral dress. So then with a head like death, shirtless in bed, I start to stress that maybe my sex does neglect. So I hope you never resent or regret or feel the need to repent for recompense. I beg you, please just reassure me that you consent to wasting your time with me. With 2 fingers and no ears hovering over the self-destruct button in my titanium elbow, I try to take his advice. What is his advice? Work well on what you like when you can. Play fiercer than your need to be productive. Eat well with your body. Love with your tongue. I try, but when I want myself as you do, jarring as I touch that part, boy of my body, it is like chewing an iron scourer to clean my teeth. It is my skeletal anvil and the hammer of my father. So no matter how I try to sever these tendencies, I always leave discrepancies. Like I'm a bad actor with an inaccurate accent, accused of acting with appalling apathy, like it's actually an accident, when the fact of the matter is that perhaps I'm just not that good at life. I got several suitcases and nowhere to go. I've got dishes that won't drip in a tea towel that never dries, fear of what I will find if I reach inside the pillowcase at night. So now waiting across from her lavender mouth, with her stomach playing shite mails and my tongue tied in a moose thing. Well, what have I got to lose? You can use me. Every crevice, make new veins, fissure me whole, please. Make my body yours, but she don't. She makes it mine instead. So yes, pull my hair. Rip me out of this body and into yours, kiss me with your calm, and fuck me with your violence, as long as you give me voice in the silence and let me choose. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Spencer. I think I'm really struck by, actually, the reason that poems are a brilliant form to write about neurodiversity. And anyone who's suddenly going, as my boyfriend just now did, oh, I see why it's called neurodiverse. See what he's done there. Yeah, poems are a brilliant form, because I think that actually, no matter, you can be approaching really difficult subject matter, you could be really letting people know that you see and feel the world in a different, sometimes difficult way. But actually, ultimately, words, playing with words, the rhythm of words is joyous, and there is joy that is shared in doing that, a deeply neurodivergent joy, I would say. And I think also a poem plays with time, and so much neurodiversity for me is experiencing time differently, sometimes processing things at speed or really slowly, or time itself going slow, fast, or both simultaneously or separately. So I'm just going to give you a heads up because of that, because some of you may appreciate the extra processing time. And we're going to have 2 more readings, and then just take, so myself and the other readers and one of the Edinburgh Autistic Mutual Aid Society will just take some questions as a panel, because it feels important to maybe just share a bit of conversation around neurodiversity. So I don't know if you might, I don't know, as an example of a question, have you found that neurodiversity is becoming more of a word that people talk to you about? For example, I'm not saying ask that question, but that's an example of a question. Other questions are available, like literally infinite amounts. Anyway, right, I'm going to introduce our next reader, who said to me just before we started this reading, she was like, I must confess something. This is going to be my first ever reading in public anywhere ever. And I think that is an amazing and wonderful thing, that her brilliant poem that's part of this anthology, which I absolutely love, and which is in the anthology in both Scots and a translation into English, is the first time of ever speaking aloud a poem. So I think particular support and love required, and enjoyment anticipated. Please welcome Kix.
Hi everyone. As Kate says, this is kind of my first time. It's not kind of my first time. This is my first time. I kind of feel a bit like I'm playing with the adults today. Not only have I never read poetry in front of anyone before, but I only started writing poetry last February, and on top of that, I only just got diagnosed as ADHD this February, and it is something that's kind of known for a while, but only about a year or so. I'm 41, and I've lived my entire life with this. I think it's both great and difficult at the same time. And I think that this poem, however I deliver it, will probably let you kind of understand a little bit of my experience with ADHD. It's called Finger in the Glyph, and I read it both in Scots, and I've got a translation for you that I'll read as well. So, sitting down to start the guard, being interested and keen to do a bang up the job. I managed to scribe maybe 12 lines, when suddenly I start one on what the temperature in Chile is, and how a rabbit keeps in wee potty room balls. Shove out in the heat and carry on. Another line down. My mind screams to chat my phone. Gay on, gay on. Although it's no matter a peep. And I only checked it no more than 3 minutes of that. What's that? I'm hungry. 6. I just ate breakfast. Ramshin anyway, then left myself. But nonetheless, the key is sealed, is broke for the day, say honest and goes in a cloud of countermacious temerity. Now I'm wondering how much a wad set and a house I could never afford would be. Check phone. News at rearranging the house. Check cell. In the name of fuck will inscribe that email. You've only 2 lines today and say it repeats all day. Trying to lead to the daily cause, be tempt to my way and my man. Hell kens I'm more than interested, but there's so much circling ruining my heat today and think about it's overwhelming. And if I'm bad with chocolate, I've worse with drink. I'll just want the one. But 2 hours and half a dozen large ones later, it seems a good idea to get to a club in a faraway city or visit an old dear friend in the middle of the night. That's how I drink mania. Odd day, every day is the fiercest battle against myself, my natural wills. All the whiles, everybody thinks you're bothersome and a bit unfathomable. It's guy exhausting. So, I've got a translation. I know that you probably have picked up most of that, but some of the words I tend to use are a bit more unusual Scots, and Kate and I thought it would be a good idea for me to read this translation. So, of course, my phone has just knackered itself and got rid of it. So, give me 2 seconds, I'll find it. Here we go. It's called Beating the Impulses. Sitting down to start the day's work, both interested and keen to do a brilliant job. I managed to write maybe 2 lines when I suddenly start wondering what the temperature of the chili is and why a rabbit poos in tiny wee round balls. Shove it out my head and carry on. Another line down. My mind screams to check my phone. Go on, go on. Although it's not made a sound and I only checked it more than 3 minutes ago. What's that? I'm hungry. 6. I just ate breakfast. I eat shite anyway and then I hate myself, but nonetheless decree the seal is broken for the day, so anything goes in a cloud of obstinate temerity. Now I'm wondering how much a mortgage in a house I could never afford would be. Check phone. News at rearranging the house. Check self in the name of fuck women. You got that bit, I'm sure. Write that email. You've only 2 lines to go. And so it repeats all day. Trying to listen to the daily calls, giving attention to my child and my husband. Hell knows I'm more than interested, but there's so much circling around my head to do and think about, it's overwhelming. And if I'm bad with chocolate, I'm worse with drink. Yes, I'll just want the one, but 2 hours and half a dozen large ones later, it seems a really great idea to go to a club in a far-off city or visit an old dear friend in the middle of the night. That's why I drink no more. All day, every day is the fiercest battle against myself, my natural impulses. All the while, everyone thinks you're impetuous and a little bit rude. It's really exhausting. And again, I've got one more poem to read. I don't have the translation, I'm afraid. And it's called Fest. It's another one kind of on the same kind of ADHD theme. Where do you start when you want to do all the things? And I mean all the things. I know you in 1 at a time, 2 or 3 at a day. I don't know how many things I've tried my hand at over the years. Some went wrong, but surprisingly, most of them out alright. See, I became a jack of all trades and master of none. But only if I can stay interested for more than 12 seconds without getting restless or even rolling about in my head. If I had all the careers I wanted, I'd have done more than Barbie. Instead, my wee mind just constantly spins through or after raw ideas, dazzling musings, which I can't articulate for the life of me, and earth-shattering epiphanies forgot in the next instant. If I could only slow it down, I bet I could be Lanalee. But anything on a warp speed is worse than watching paint dry. So I suppose I'll just stay alert. Thank you very much. Oh, what a way to start reading poetry. Thank you, Kate. Absolutely brilliant to hear those. I identified with so much of it as well. I don't have an official ADHD diagnosis. I don't know if anybody else missed a few lines at some point because they were also wondering why rabbits make little perfect round balls. I really did go off on a tangent there. Maybe that could be a question you ask in the Q&A upcoming any minute now. So before then, we have another ADHD poet and another poem that I very much identified with from the anthology. Can we welcome, please, Natalie Jane Clarke.
Thank you. And I'll start with facts. Did you know that wombats poo is cute? Yeah, don't know how, you know, but it's cool. But I'll get into it. My poem from the super cool anthology. Right at the very start, which is even more quite cool. I can always find it very easily, basically. Right, so it's cool. She's bright, but she talks too much. A room of 30 malleable minds and stretching flesh. 2 pupils stand there. He can't sit still, neither can I. He folds paper airplanes and makes them fly. My legs dog, so my doodles march over margins, across my hands and up my wrists. He finds it hard to be quiet, so do I. He makes animal noises, and plane noises, and fart noises. It hurts me to let someone else answer the question. He never finishes his work. I struggle too, despite my love of learning. Sharp but needs to put in more effort is how we're both described. Ideas rush too much, or our brains stall and stutter. No letter written looks much like another. We both receive recurring detention for never doing homework. We both lose or crumple or forget our notes. We both have the occasional meltdown, hints of negative feedback. We were in the same classes from the age of 4 to 16. Yes, he was diagnosed at 8, and he was diagnosed at 30. You're right, the latter was me, and she. You see, he fit the classic criteria of ADHD. I mean, look, I did too. But although our symptoms were often the same, his manifested in ways that affected others more, whilst mine often turned inward or were hidden at home, basking and coping and peddling faster, drowning in junk and shame. Society's perceptions and expectations of our genders were vastly different, not to mention the gender-based gap. The lack of knowledge about the condition that affects everybody. Only through other ADHD people on the internet, their honesty, their research, their silly humour, their campaigning to dispel myths, I discovered why I am the way I am. So I'm going to take this chaotic energy, fight and shout and teach and shine to make things right for others who need answers. When I was when I got diagnosed, actually, I got referred to like a charity. There wasn't really any like support from the GP or anything like that. But this charity was really great, and they spent like lots of time putting together PowerPoints, and then they had Zoom meetings with me and 2 other women that were also diagnosed in adulthood, and this poor woman kept trying to just take us through the PowerPoint, and we just kept talking over it, like just sharing ideas. Like it was about 6 weeks, I think, and it was fantastic. You know, once a week for about 6 weeks, just sort of asking each other, oh, have you found out about this, or you know, what, even just about medication or about support, or have you seen this, or you know, and that was just really, that was actually the thing. So from that, I started like being more open about it on like Instagram stories and things like that. And I set up a WhatsApp group for just a few people that I knew through lots of random things, or the weird hobbies I've picked up over the years. And that's been a really great just source of comfort, just sending each other pictures of our files, basically. Or I've started doing time-lapse videos of me tidying it, which actually is really cool to watch and helps me do it. Get it done. I can't leave the room, I have to finish it. So this is a really short one that I wrote a while ago, and it's about how my brain works. And I think Kate mentioned earlier, just like accepting, or just neurodiversity, brain works. This is called You're a Bit Much. Give me a single seed, and I will give you 1,000 blooms. Give me a landscape still, and I will give you bubbles, rushing, wishing, flickering, revolving evolutions, shoogling earth through finger gaps. Give me a word, one word, and I will give you synonyms spinning, poetry, putrid and pleasant, woven, unwoven threads, knots, denouements, etymologies, genealogies, cosmologies. Give me a moment, and I will give you lifetimes. Thank you.
A perfect poem to end on. How a bit much can become everything beautifully, abundantly, and it feels like that's the case for the words in this anthology. So I think the official bit. I'm not very good at selling or giving official speeches. I was just one of the editors, but I believe this is a good point for me to say. It'd be really good if you bought the anthology tonight. For why? Oh, because then you'll have the anthology. That's why. Like that's the best reason. Not because capitalism. I don't think this is a very capitalistic endeavour as far as I'm aware. Yes, because then you'll have the anthology and you can share it with others. And because it's brilliant. That's why. Yeah, good. Well, that was easy. Right. So the Q&A bit might be a bit awkward, I suppose, as we awkwardly come up to the chairs, other readers, and someone from Amaze. Looks like Fergus is coming, Fergus Murray of Edinburgh, Autistic Mutual Aid Society, Edinburgh. But so now over to you, audience. Yeah, we're going to awkwardly, some of us might sit, some of us will stand in a socially distanced way. It's impressive. We're a poem of awkward. Yes, come up, Spencer, Natalie, Kate, come up. I know, it means we could be asked anything about anything. Very neurodivergent person friendly. And now, yeah, you lot have also like got to speak up and like put your hand up and ask a question. Very neurodivergent person friendly. It might be. It's just dying to ask them, or two, or three, or four, or kiss all the dog mate. I'll pass the mic along. Go on, question at the back.
What was the name of the agency that gave you support and was really good?
Oh, yeah, the name of who's that?
I think it was.
Yeah, so you mentioned it.
Great question. I think they're actually called ADHD Perth, so I live in Perth, but I would recommend you look at the ADHD Coalition website, and on there they have a little map of Scotland, and it shows you all the types of help that you can get, including charities and things like that. I'm very lucky that is there. That's not in every place. What I would say though is there's maybe a lack of psychiatrists in my area, so that side of it is a tricky thing, but there's other support there. So the ADHD Coalition website is a great start for Scotland, and they have lots of help.
Thank you, Natalie, for this practical question. Well, it's funny. I get the impression, although in England there are pockets of support, generally as a country, Scotland has so much more available for neurodivergent people. Actually, I get the impression both in terms of groups and organisations. Right, another question.
It's one
to do with the questionnaire.
It's a question for you, actually, Kate. on the one hand, your poem seemed to be taking the whole piss out of the diagnosis thing and how valid it is. But then on the other hand, you said getting a diagnosis for you was really important because it enabled you to connect with other neurodiverse people. But why couldn't you do that without a psychiatrist who understands fuck all about neurodiversity telling you had it when you already knew you had it? I really don't understand.
Brilliant question. Yeah, it's the ambivalence of why am I taking the piss out of the diagnosis and the awful psychiatrist, but on the other hand, really wanting that diagnosis in order to, in some ways, I think, to feel validated. Yes. Basically, that contradiction I live with and in, as in, I think the labels, certainly, for example, autism and ADHD, we will not have those labels in, let's say, 30 years, probably earlier. There'll be another way of conceptualizing our particular neurodivergence. And the label and the conceptualization is a consequence of lots of things to do with our current way of seeing humans, of seeing how humans should be and shouldn't be. So part of me sets no store by it whatsoever, but another part of me sees it as absolutely vital and important to speak up and out as an autistic person, partly so that I have a position from which to speak, to say there are problems with this label. And I know that's a paradox, but I can't speak out against it if I don't have it. And also because it has enabled me to have this community and these connections and this tribe, and I could have had it self-diagnosed, I absolutely agree. And maybe I would have had that thing of, but am I really? Am I really? I'm totally over, am I really now, by the way, 5 years on. But initially, I suppose I did external validation. So I agree, it's a contradiction, it's a paradox. Can you think it's okay for me to live a contradiction and paradox? Because poetry and comedy is good for expressing contradiction and paradox, which is why I don't often speak outside of an arts or cultural space about this stuff. Having said that, I am about to give a presentation to a law firm on June the 28th. But there again, I'll still be speaking as a poet, I think, and just in favour of neurodiversity, which it still seems weirdly new to a lot of people, the idea that we're wired up differently, think differently, process and feel the world differently, and that's great. Thank you. I'm calling out the paradox. Okay. Another question. Oh, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm like in control of this matter, aren't I? So I can yes. Okay. And so, question to all our panelists, which is, and it's of course okay. It hasn't really meant much until the anthology, but what does neurodiversity as a word or a concept mean to you? Is it useful? Because of course we've all talked about different conditions, different ways of being, but is there something about neurodiversity which you thought as a word or idea, and if so, what? So I'm going to start with Fergus and go down the line. Fergus.
Can I ask you to squeeze a little bit in? Just the camera's got the stage and bugger all else. And yeah, there we go. There we go. All right, we can see you all now.
Yeah, so different people experience the world really differently, and mostly this is invisible to people. They don't think about it. They don't realize that some people visualize things really clearly and other people have no mental imagery. They don't realize that other people have a completely different experience of reading than they do. Some people, have all the voices. Other people, it's not voice-based at all. They just take in a page and then they have that in their heads. So just that realization that actually human experience is incredibly diverse at the level of basic processing is very deep. And it runs against the whole way that the education system is structured. I'm a teacher, so I work with very neurodiverse kids. Every now and then I work with neurotypical kids, and that's interesting in a way. But you know, we label kids as lazy or stupid or weird. Like most teachers won't say their kids are weird in front of them, but you know, we are. I certainly am. And these are all concepts that don't really explain very much. So accepting that human brains just are very diverse, and that's something that we need to work with, and it's kind of beautiful and wonderful, and humankind is better because we have these diverse ways of experiencing and processing and thinking. Next speaker.
Thank you, Greg. It's fantastic to done. So Kate, yeah, neurodiversity for you is an idea or word. Yeah, I very much agree with what you said there. I think that's really, really important. I went to school in the 90s, and that was a time where the teachers did tell the kids that they were weird. And I remember there being a few of the sort of quote mark weird children at school, and when I think back, I was one of them. I was never overtly called out on it very much. To your point, it so resonates with me. It's just what school was like for me. But in terms of the great paradox that we just spoke about, I guess I always knew I was different, but I always thought I was supposed to be the same. And it never even kind of crossed my mind that I wasn't, although I knew I was, and I can't really explain it any better than that. And it was only when I was within my work having the conversation with somebody about different colours of personalities. I don't know if you've seen that. You know, some people are red personalities, some people are yellow. Might surprise you all to find that I'm yellow, which means that you like to just kind of chat. So there, we were talking about it, and the person that was talking told me and the rest of the audience that he was neurodiverse as well, and he started talking about why he was yellow, and he felt the yellow was very much a neurodiverse colour in a lot of ways. And when he was telling me this experience, I started ticking things off in my head. And after that, I was really, really acutely aware when I went to a meeting, and I came out with a manager within the company I worked for, who said, I couldn't believe that person didn't look up for the entirety of the meeting. Even when I spoke to them straight, asked them a question, and they wouldn't look up. They didn't, or if they did look up, they looked out the window instead of looking at me. And they did it the whole way through that meeting. That was so rude. I can't believe how rude that person was. And I suddenly had this light bulb moment, and I said, they're not rude. It's the way that person processes the information. And I realised that I have always done that. I can't pay attention to things unless I have something in my hand. I'm right, I have to write notes, I have to go pictures, and I got really defensive of that person and thought, how dare you call that person rude? And that's just a neurotypical person that has no idea of what neurodiversity is, right? And I can't tell you whether that person's diagnosed or undiagnosed, the person drawing pictures, or whether that's just the way that they like to process in a neurotypical way. But it doesn't matter. The fact that we still have these constraints of people that think that other people are good by just existing is something that I'm deeply passionate about us getting rid of. And whether I got my diagnosis in February or not, whether they said, you're not neurodiverse, totally as neurotypical as it comes, I think I would still be that passionate about it, because it's really, really important that we see the world through all the different ways that everybody can do.
I might just be rephrasing kind of what they've already said. They've already said it really well. But yeah, I think for me it's sort of the term offers sort of connection, awareness, and accessibility. So first of all, like this anthology, just this event, right? Just the more people I see, the more I think it's okay, and I feel like kind of kinship with other people to be a certain way or whatever. weird, whatever that might be, and just knowing that, you know, there's strategies and ways of being that work for me, I guess. And also just the awareness really helps it. Like, that was a great example of that. Like, the more people that understand it, the better it will be, the better people can exist just as they are. And accessibility as well, just people understanding that what we provide for them, whether that be an arts and cultural event or something like more like a library, an office space, you know, that you need to be aware of, using the fact that some people have different needs and you might need to make adjustments for them, and just having accessibility at the planning stage and through all levels, not just as an afterthought. I think so. The awareness, I think, comes over to.
Spencer, can I get you to? Yeah, there you go. Shuffle into the middle. Thank you.
Is that graceful enough for the camera? Yeah, just same as everyone else, really. Like, everyone just sort of hit it on the head. It's bang on. I think there's the great thing about kind of, you know, diverse conversations and awareness in workplace education coming up more and more is really good. I think it's really important from receiving a diagnosis point of view of being able, like, it's quite reassuring if you've spent your whole life thinking I'm living in a different reality to other human beings, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, yeah, I am living a different reality. That's all right. There's a reason for that. I think that's good. I think we're maybe coming to a dangerous point in talking about it, though, in terms of how much we're defining by calling ourselves neurodiverse. I think that's really proud, but someone once did highlight to me that I used to always say, I am schizophrenic, not I have schizophrenia. And there's a very powerful difference there. And I think that, yeah, I just think as the conversation expands, it needs to be remembered that neurodiversity is like an expansion, not a reduction or a labeling. It's a dot.
Thank you. That is the best point to end any conversation on. And beautifully said, and it's something about the diversity of neurodiversity. I think that's the best set of explanations of neurodiversity I've ever heard. I'm going to, so Fergus is going to stay on because we're about to introduce a maze, but can we give a massive round of applause with noise or not noise to our brilliant contributors, poets and panelists, Spencer, Clarke and Natalie. Thank you so much. Thank you. And so just to round off, it's very important, and especially because actually I don't think this event will be happening without you, Fergus, actually. I've been got in touch with Lighthouse and they've made this event happen. But you help run an amazing organisation in Edinburgh, and you also do creative writing, workshops and events as part of that. And there's also something about this date that's very significant, and it's kind of wonderful that this launching on the birthday of Fergus's mum, Diana Murray, who's an amazing figure in theorising and activising, that's not even a word anyway, theorising and activising about neurodiversity, particularly autism, but much underlying that. So I'm going to hand over to you, but of course, Fergus Murray.
That working? Yeah. So yeah, I got in touch with Lighthouse when this anthology was coming out and sort of said, you seem like a great venue to have a launch event for this NeurodiVERSE collection. We had an event or two with Lighthouse in the past, and they've been very supportive and we worked together. So Amaze is the Autistic Mutual Aid Society of Edinburgh. We set up a few years ago. Kate was actually there right at the start, when we were running groups for people who had recently discovered that they were autistic or had it officially confirmed. And Simon and I set it up with a few other people to act as sort of a catalyst for autistic community in Edinburgh. We had been to Autistic, which Kate mentioned earlier, the yearly retreat/conference for autistic people by autistic people. And meeting that many autistic people in one place was just an incredible experience. Like meeting people who think the same as you, or have the same or similar habits of thought, when you'll spend your whole life being really weird and like nobody really quite getting you, or most people that you meet not really getting you. It's an incredible experience, and we sort of came back to Edinburgh and we're like, why can't we have that here? So now we kind of do, which is great. So yeah, Kate mentioned that it's my mother's birthday today. It wouldn't be my mother's birthday today. This time last year, she was making it to her 75th birthday, which we thought she probably wouldn't. And yeah, she was an activist for years and years. I mean, she was an activist long before she ever knew she was autistic. She was a socialist and active in a variety of different ways. I want to read a poem about her and 2 poems by her. So I think I'll start with Janine Booth's poem. I think she just called it Diana Murray, 1946 to 2021. So Janine, as mentioned, is one of the editors. I think the book was originally her idea, and they were friends for a long time. A nature lover, fighting finder, activist and fighter, against oppression for our future, thinker, speaker, writer. Always radical, always left, sometimes green Labour. A friend, comrade, partner, mum, a newfound Scottish Labour. An organiser, platform builder, amplifier of others. There's light at the end of the ascension tunnel, thanks to your endeavours. Monotopic focus on monotopic feeling. Intense and fired up, hyper-driven, motivated, cheering. An interest in interest, constructive diligence. So long, Dr. Dynamite, productive irritants. A couple of things there that might make sense to some of the audience and not others. She used the title productive irritant for her website and various other things, having been described that way by one of the neurotypical people involved in the National Autism Project, where Dinah ran the Autistic Advisory Group, which kind of helped steer it in the direction of neurodiversity and like actually understanding what autism is. And monotopic theory. So monotopism is her theory of autism. Developed with some other autistic people. She was autistic. I guess I didn't mention that. Perhaps that was implied strongly. And it sees autism in terms of attention tunnels and autistic processing being focused on a smaller number of things at any given time than it is for other people. So process fewer things, it makes some things easier and it makes other things harder. I launched a site today about that, monotopism.org. I will look it up later, probably not now. I think I've spoken enough about her. I think Gideon from Amaze, did you want to come and read a thing?
I probably have to sit through as it's a number of pages.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I'm also a member of a maze like Fergus, and I'm gonna read something that's not a poem, but a very short story. And I hope you can see how it relates to autism and autistic community. I'll just get the article. Okay, this is called I Can See You. There he is again. At the talk last night, he had mostly been throwing furtive glances at me, and he thought I was driven. Now he's at the end of a tram carriage, craning his neck as though he does not care about how conspicuous he is being in front of all the other morning commuters. I recognize him immediately, despite my face like this. Isn't his face I remember, more specific features of it. I recognize the undisguised disgust in his eyes. I recognize the look he is giving me. I should probably have warned you that it's going to be a bit longer and also not in verse, so I hope it's okay. Something about me must be bothering him. I'm used to that. Something about me is always bothering someone. And when they give me that look, it is hard to look away, harder even to deny it as the man from last night. Tearing my gaze away from him and focus on the rumbling of ears, making the carriage by great and cross. When I shift my concentration further even to the bustle of people outside, on the pavements and the statues on the red clay facade of the building they're passing by. The tram should come to a stop just after the bend here. On an impulse, I get up and saunter to the doors. The man also gets up. Of course, I try to breathe slowly, deliberately. But the more the train slows down, the more my breath quickens. He's striding toward the other set of doors. As the train stops, I hold my breath, waiting for the doors. The screeching opens. The man is not getting old just yet. The steps are getting ever smaller as he's approaching the doors. I step out with one foot, hold still for a moment. He quickly turns his head, roughly for the first time. When he gets out, quickly step back into the carriage. There's a throng of tourists getting on. They conceal my opponent, but also conceal me from him. Fair enough. Still holding my breath, I rush back into the carriage to an empty seat, shaking my head and muttering to myself, so that everyone in earshot understands I've just mixed up my stops, or not found an expected acquaintance waiting at the stop, or suffered some other normal mishap that happens all the time to normal people. If we didn't care, no one is looking at me now. Or are they purposely looking away, seeing through my charade of playing at being normal? Is there maybe someone avoiding me among them? I cannot tell, as I don't recognize anyone. But when I could tell either way. I sit down with a thumb loud enough to equal my relief, hard enough to hurt my backside. Now I'm sitting in the wrong direction. That's always made me queasy. I'm getting a headache too. Last night's sides are roaring through my bowels. My mouth tastes sour. I should change seats, at least so that, if push comes to shove, I won't skew against the direction of travel. I get up as the tram is slowing down for the next stop. The space where the man sat is still empty. Of course, how could he have got back in? It actually is the only unoccupied seat within reach. I plunk down more softly this time. Taking a leisurely look out the window, I once again recognize him immediately. He's at the center of a mass of passengers, waiting to board. I still can't see his eyes, but I swear I can make out his hateful, now impatient stare. When the doors open, he pushes through the other passengers with unapologetic single-mindedness. So yeah, he's walking towards me. Fast but uncoordinated. Is he chittering with rage? You, he says. His voice sounds odd. I can't place it, but I know it. What? I say. Not a question, just a what. Looked in the mirror recently? No, I reply, baffled at the audacity. I know I'm not a looker, but ugly, but disappointing, displeasing to look at. For most people at least. Perhaps worse now that I've not looked in the mirror in a good while. But what business is that of anyone else? We don't have to look at me. Oh, damn, he says. He doesn't even sound angry anymore, but still strange. It's the wrong word, strangely familiar. There's something about his voice. You don't see it yet, but damn, you're me. What? I say? A question this time. You're me. You look like me. Exactly. Come on. What is this? As he talks faster, more nervously, I recognize his voice. It's my own voice, but not quite. It's a recorded version. I have so far only heard it in recorded form. It's my own voice, but not inside my head, not distorted by my own perception. What is this? I really hear him this time, given it's my own voice. You're me, I say. Fuck. I've always been told there was no one like me, he says. There's no one as unpleasant, complicated, difficult as you. That's what they told me. Everyone. Yeah, same, I say. He is me. He does look a lot like me, I guess. Similar stature, figure, slightly different hair, exactly the same long, thin fingers. And more importantly, we're doing the same thing now as mine. Drumming on his feet, one by one. He's standing, but still can't stop himself from doing that, bending over slightly to do it. No one really is like that, he says. An echo from the past. What then? Das wissen wir, he asks, pointing first to himself, then to me. Still means nothing, I say, when I echo what I've been told so many times. It's not the looks that are the problem, but the way you look at people. So they are going to hurt you, and force them to hurt you. Drumming my fits faster and faster, as I see it. No, he says. The drumming stopped again without my noticing, but the horde of students that have come on cannot escape my notice, with their shouting and pushing, washing over us like a wave of energy and drinks Africa. The problem is the way others look at us. They never see us. I nod when I say, I can see you. Okay, so what was that? I should probably also have said before that, but it's also my first time that I've ever read anything in public, at least not online. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks, Gideon. Sorry, you want to come up and read a little bit?
Okay, cool. So, I'm Sunny. I'm one of the other co-founders of Amaze. This is Kithel, who is Amaze's engagement officer. I'm autistic. I sort of wanted to say a little bit just very quickly about that because while being autistic is not the only relevant thing about me, it's not the only part of me. I do say that I am autistic because it's a relevant part of my identity, just as I'm tall, I'm Asian, I'm Scottish, I'm all of these different things. I'm non-binary, so I sort of see it as an important and integral part of me. But what realizing that I'm autistic did was that it allowed me to connect with who I am, because it allowed me to connect with the community. So I'm going to read a poem that I wrote last year. It's the start of a much longer poem. It's a reflection on a year of growth and change. And I should say I've not read a poem out loud for almost 20 years. I used to read poems in bars when I was a teenager. Now that I said that out loud, sounds kind of strange, but I used to write poems to kind of process my feelings and also to kind of connect, and I lost my way for a long time. And this is the first poem I wrote when I got back. It's called The Wild. I am wild. The animal part of me grows stronger daily. It hides amongst bracken and under old tree roots. It sees the small things in fabulous detail and is gentle with them. It loves to hold and be held, to show you the treasures it has found, to follow you on your own wild wanderings, to feel rooted in its feeling of itself. It is not always graceful. It makes mistakes and stumbles over bracken and puppyish excitement. It can crash through your teddy bear's picnic. Because of this, I've mistrusted my animal self, feared showing it to others, kept it hidden away in the woods, and now this app's crashed, so I can't bring it back up. I also have a bee in my ear, which I appreciate very much for its wildness. But it's also pleasant. There we go. It is not always graceful. It makes mistakes and stumbles over bracken in puppyish excitement. It can crash through your teddy bear's picnic. Perhaps because of this, I've mistrusted my animal self, feared showing it to others, kept it hidden away in the woods, in seaside caves, under heavy rocks. Now I see it. I feel how well it knows the core of me, how sensitive it's feeling for others, how hard it tries to connect. It is the feeling part of me I tried to tame for safety, while my thoughts and reasoning swirled and looped, untethered and ungrounded. Now, I feel and see more and more through my animal self. I am learning to show that part of me, let it be seen. It is the light on the lake and the rushing of the waters, the salt on my cheek when I can taste how I'm feeling, your warm safety and cold terror shared for me to resonate and tune. And I realize this is all of me, and it's okay. And I think, and so must be all of you.
I guess I'll just do this last bit with the dog. Thanks for that. So I wanted to read two of my own poems before we close. The first one, Kate borrowed the opening lines for a poem about my mum called When I Told Her a Year Forward. She wrote this in her early 20s, so long before she realised she was autistic, but she included it in her chapter, One That Got Away, for a collection she edited called Coming Out Asperger's, which she would have called Coming Out Autistic if the publisher had allowed it. And I'm sure that if it came out now, that's what it would be. Cut a flower, it does not bleed. The sap withdraws so far from your blade, your love, does myself turn. I build myself a house of glass. You look, and thinking you see me, you see yourself. You smile, murmur love, and call it union, that I would call the coldest separation. I think that's one of those poems which, knowing that the author is autistic, takes a slightly different path. This last poem is a very different sort of thing. It's called Homily. There are bits of this that she liked to quote at me when I was a kid. I think she wrote this in about 1983 when she was finishing her PhD and raising 3 small children. I was 5. Leo was 7 and Bruno was 9 at this point. So it's called Homily. Ask, is that so of every claim you make? Prefer the grimmest truth to glittering faith. Control the urge to say and see and do exclusively what pleases you. If you imagine you're the centre of the show, forget it. No one else thinks so. Those motives that you like to think so high, be sure your actions don't give them the lie. Don't laud the beauty of a good intent, unless it's turned to deed by efforts spent. And now you've made these sentiments so neat, why not go off and have yourself a treat? I think that draws us to a close, unless Kate wants to add anything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fergus. It felt really important to have Amaze speaking as a local and important group, and also to have that tribute to Dinah. Basically, activist communities kind of need elders and a lineage that they can look back on, and the autism world is only just beginning to get that. The neurodivergent world is only just beginning to get that. And I think there's then something about by identifying yourself as something, by gathering together in an anthology, in a book, in a place, in an audience, in your mind, then you can achieve much greater things together than you could on your own, and much greater things when you look backward and forward and recognise where you are in the present. That sounded a bit waffly. I hope that made more sense ultimately than it kind of did in my head. Basically, thank you so much, everybody who's taken part in the readings. Thank you to Lighthouse, who I have always wanted to have a book in. It feels a great privilege. Thank you, Mary, for being so welcoming and supporting the book so much, and for hosting this event. Thanks to all of you for coming. Have wine, have lemonade, buy books, chat amongst yourselves, or find a quiet space, or run away quickly. Don't feel the need to mask. Just be whoever you are. If you're doing it for the first time, could be a bit chaotic, could go wrong. That'll be exciting, won't it? Equally might lead some of us to want to run away, but no, complex, paradox, contradiction, that's what we have. In summary, all good, neurodiverse, crack on. Thank you. Good night.